Hey guys, Mike here, and welcome back to the latest episode of Real Horror with Mike and Pete. In case you guys haven't noticed, my co-host Pete Macabre couldn't be here this week, but don't worry, he's going to be back next week during our usual regular formatted show. But this week we're going to be embarking on our first video commentary, and our first victim off the lot is 1985's A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Now this is a movie that I probably watched just as much as the original '84 classic growing up, and I'm really excited to sit down and talk to you about it because I think that there's a lot of great things in this film. There's a lot of not so subtle homoerotic undertones to this film that, of course, a lot of people have made fun of over the years. But you know, as it has turned out, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 has really developed this cult classic kind of allure to it, and I've really liked it for a lot of reasons like that. And I'm going to be speaking about that and a whole bunch of other topics as we watch the film together. So the way that this video commentary is going to work is if you guys happen to have a copy of the DVD or the Blu-ray, I'm actually going to be watching the Blu-ray found in the Nightmare on Elm Street Blu-ray collection. So if you guys have that, go ahead and pop it into your DVD and Blu-ray player now. Get to the main menu and hit play. And then right when you hit play, immediately hit pause. So you should be seeing nothing but a black screen, and on your Blu-ray player, it should just read 5 zeros in a row. That's exactly what you want to see in order for us to be, as synced up as humanly possible. So go ahead and get that all together. I'm already all set, and, we'll count that down in just a minute. So while you guys are getting that prepared, go ahead and make yourself some popcorn, go ahead and grab some soda, because this is going to be very reminiscent of Monster Vision with Joe Bob Briggs. I'm going to be sitting with you guys the entire runtime, talking about my early experiences with it, my feelings on the film now and then, the actors, just a lot of interesting and informative and probably funny anecdotes that you guys may or may not know about the history of A Nightmare on Elm Street 2. So, on behalf of my co-host Pete Macabre, we are both very excited to, be running this new horror web series, and, most importantly, we're very excited to conduct these video commentaries. So this is just going to be the first of many, many more of these. So, alright guys, once again, if you guys are queued up with your DVD and Blu-ray players, you should be seeing nothing but a black screen, and the time code on your player should be reading 5 straight zeros. So make sure that we have that. What I'm going to do is, well, actually, you guys should also have your volume kind of on your television set kind of toned down relatively low. That way, you can hear my commentary on it. That way, both volumes aren't really fighting with each other. So tend to tone down the volume during the movie so that the commentary can be kind of the main thing driving it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna count down 3, 2, 1, play. And of course, at play, I want you guys to hit play on your remote control, and then we'll begin this awesome journey. So, all that said, black screens, 5 straight zeros on your player time codes. So here we go, guys. 3, 2, 1, play. And here we go, the New Line Cinema logo going across the screen right now. I always liked that logo. I don't know, it was just one of those things, and I always would be creeped out when I would see it when New Line Cinema films would start as a kid, because I'd always think it was a Freddy film. And here we are, this opening in Springwood, Ohio, the setting of the original Nightmare on Elm Street film, this yellow school bus coming down the road here, and a great scratchy opening of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Love that. And then, of course, the, very awesome, piano keys to segue into the subtitle, Freddy's Revenge. I really liked this, I really dug this opening because, it's a creepy thing. I mean, it really goes from 0 to 60, very, very quickly. And, of course, right there you have Freddy himself, Robert Englund, out of makeup, playing the bus driver. I'm sure many die-hard Elm Street aficionados know that, but there he is. Yep. Get on home to do your homework, kiddies. There you go. You see star Mark Patton in the back, looking very geeky and withdrawn. And then you got the two girls on the bus that are going to be very important a little bit later on in this sequence. But those two girls in particular are notable faces, actually. Alison Barron is one of them, and she would, of course, go on to play Helen in Kevin Tenney's Night of the Demons. And then the other girl on the bus is Joanne Willett, who would go on that same year to appear in Real Genius with Val Kilmer, and then as a bit of an interesting turn in Elm Street history, she would also go on to star in the sitcom Just the 10 of Us with other Elm Street alumni like Heather Langenkamp and Brooke Thesis from Nightmare on Elm Street 4. So pretty cool history to just go along with, two girls that are really just cameo appearances. I mean, they're credited as girl on bus, the both of them. So very interesting to see that those girls went on to, a little bit more success. And there's a creepy-looking Mark Patton in the back, rightfully getting made fun of. I mean, looks like a zombie. See, I was never a kid that rode the bus. I always had my parents pick me up from school, so I was always kind of envious that kids, took the bus and stuff, but I didn't qualify to get picked up on the bus because I didn't live far enough from the school, but I always was envious of that. I always wanted to ride the bus as a kid to get that, very typical school experience. And this is what I'm talking about, the 0 to 60 aspect. You're in perfect suburbia, and then the bus just kind of goes off into this dead, this dead desert landscape, and it's just going crazy. And there he is, Freddy, right there, with the glove on, might I add, the glove right there, which is something that you won't see later on in the film. Oh god, this sequence just freaks me out. I mean, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, say what you will about it, but it is this film that I can still watch to this day, and if I'm alone late at night, in the middle of the night, and I watch this film, I will run up the steps to my bedroom, because this film still can freak me out. There's just certain scares in it. There's definitely still a brooding darkness in this film that, as the series went on, Freddy got more vocal and more comical. But A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 definitely still has that darkness and that very brooding, naughty nature to it. And, of course, the desert landscape is kind of falling out from underneath them, which is just wild. How they shot this sequence is very interesting. It was kind of like this rig this rig mechanism that, was rocking the bus back and forth and back and forth. It got very violent and just really uncontrollable. Joanne Willett, I believe, even mentions on the Never Sleep Again documentary that there wasn't much acting required in this sequence. It got so violent and crazy that she even bashed her nose against one of the seats, which is very obvious to see. And Mark Patton just hoping to God he can get out of this. Oh, God. That is such a great shot. I love that with the lightning bolt hitting that. It is just on the verge of hell right there. Just frightening. Just absolutely frightening. And there's Fred himself. I mean, if I was in the back of the bus, I would absolutely be using those two girls as shields. Nah, I'm not even gonna lie. I would not be a hero in that situation. Those two girls are absolutely getting pushed in front of me. Sorry. But that's what would happen. And there's that rocking mechanism. That is just chilling. And there is that glove, again. And you will not see it on Freddy again in the film, which is very interesting. It does play a part, but... And then, of course, we cut back from this hellish nightmare back into Springwood, Ohio. This is a nice supporting cast that Mark Patton has surrounded him. You have, of course, the great Hope Lang, who sadly passed away in 2003. She also starred in Death Wish and David Lynch's Blue Velvet a year later. The husband, of course, is played by the great Clu Gulager, who has a resume and filmography that goes on for miles and miles. Getting his start and early B westerns, and this same year he would appear in The Return of the Living Dead. His son would go on to be a director, John Gulager. He would direct the Three Feast movies, and most recently he directed Piranha 3 Double D, which Clu also appeared in. And the little girl, right there is, you wouldn't think much of her, but she plays Jesse's sister, and that's actually Christy Clark right there. She would go on and appear as Lacey Hellerstadt in the really underwhelming Children of the Corn 2, The Final Sacrifice, before spending over 20 years on Days of Our Lives. So very cool. She's beautiful in Children of the Corn 2, probably one of the only redeeming things in that film. Fu Manchu's a completely fictional cereal that I wish existed. Kind of like Agatha Christie's in House of a Thousand Corpses. There's always funny, fictional cereals that I wish existed. That they don't, Clu. No one likes a smartass. And looks like Jesse has a carpool to school. His new friend, who is played by Kim Myers, who bears a striking, absolutely striking resemblance to Meryl Streep. Take a look. Just beautiful. And Jesse's awesome car. For the record, I drive a red car, and I absolutely refer to my car as the Deadly Dinosaur from time to time, and I have Mark Patton to thank for that. This film was actually written by David Chaskin, who actually worked in New Line's 16mm film department before getting the job scripting Nightmare on Elm Street 2. The film is directed by Jack Shoulder, who worked as an editor before making his leap into directing. He would, previously to Nightmare on Elm Street 2, he directed 1982's Alone in the Dark with Jack Palance and Donald Pleasance. A phenomenal little film, very underrated, very effective. It's a great film. Of course, you got Robert Russler there at bat, the cocky jock character in it. Who's great. He actually auditioned for this film on the last day of filming for Weird Science, and it was actually his co-star from that film, Robert Downey Jr., who drove him to his audition for this. Obviously, it worked out. Marshall Bell, the slightly sadistic gym coach. Robert Russler, Ron Grady, and Jesse's relationship kind of starts off with quite a bit of friction. You kind of think that they would be, kind of like enemies against each other and have issues. But it's kind of funny how their relationship and friendship kind of blooms in this one, because right off the bat here, you'd think it would be all downhill. A little brawl with a little shanking never hurt anybody, right? And he just couldn't get those pants up before he engaged in a little bit more brawling with Grady. Coach Schneider. Here comes Schneider. He's a very harsh coach, isn't he? Very, very harsh. Oh my god, if I had to endure something like that, that would just be dreadful. Yeah, you don't see that too much anymore. Teachers smoking in their offices. My, how times have changed, huh? The word is that he carouses queer S&M joints downtown. Might want to remember that for later. Grady's not very subtle in his deliveries. Are you mounting her nightly or what? He's just trying to make conversation, bro. That's all. I know I just tried to kill you on the baseball field, but I'm just trying to make conversation. Cool wash, Jesse. And here's where we are referencing the original Elm Street. Oh, he's full of it. He's totally full of it, Jess. And I just love that this film brought back, the Elm Street house as such a vocal point of it, because this is really, you wouldn't really see the house inhabited by people again in the series. I mean, it would be in the series as, kind of, this symbol throughout its the rest of the franchise. But this really would be the last time that you would have a family living in it. I really like this build-up too, as things really start to get very odd and whatnot, and it's just the building of heat. Do people wear scrubs to bed? I don't know. That's the first I've seen it, but Jesse Walsh does. But yeah, I always liked that about this film, was that it's a slow build, and the heat in the house has a lot to do with it. So, and that kind of that adds, and it grows and grows in the film, but I like that. And this is just, slasher movie 101. Do not go outside and investigate a strange noise, especially in a back alley, greatly camouflage shrouded back alley. That would not be me. But he's wearing scrubs, so he can handle it. It's a great score in this film, too. I think that has a lot to do with it. Music is always, such an important aspect to a film, and it's very effective in this film in particular, and I think that's where a lot of the chills and the scares really grow, is from this very eerie kind of piano music. That's not common to see stranger in your boiler room, but I mean, go inside or walk across the street. I'm just a selfish person. I don't think I would go back in to get my family out of there yet. I think I would ensure that safety was coming, but again, selfish, but just me. Again, may as well just investigate this, because I mean, the kid's got balls. He really does. Wow. Oh, that's scary. Dad? Just awesome. Mark Patton actually auditioned for the original Elm Street. Wow. This is what I'm talking about as far as the brooding, dark nature of Elm Street 2. Freddy is definitely more vocal in this one. His eye colors are different in this one. It's kind of like a hellish, reddish, amber color. Very demonic. It's very effective in this film. But this kind of, it's always this dance with Freddy and his victims, and that kind of jump scare of Jesse kind of walking into Robert Englund is very chilling, and that always, still to this day, just makes me jump. But Mark Patton, like I said, originally auditioned for the original Elm Street before landing the gig here, and he actually beat out people like Brad Pitt and Christian Slater for the role, so good for him. As you can see, waking up in just a puddle of sweat. It's just the heat in this house. It's and I like that. I think that really goes into the whole idea of night terrors or nightmares, when they're very, very effective and they're that chilling to somebody's psyche. So I really like that they played that angle up in the kind of the reality and fantasy of how the dreams or nightmares are affecting his character. I always loved this sequence, just, you know, them in the chemistry lab just kind of messing around as Jesse is falling asleep, which is just a bad thing to do. And again, Jesse rocking the awesome wardrobe. That is a Hawaiian shirt of some kind that I don't think would be too far removed from the set of Miami Vice. Is that Screech behind Robert Rustler? I don't know. Again, I need to get that watch. Next time I meet Mark Patton at a convention, I may have to ask him about that groovy watch. It's very interesting. Obviously, to most, you know, Elm Street aficionados, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 has always had this stigma of being, you know, this very, not very, you know, well-kept, you know, the homoerotic entry of the Elm Street saga. You know, it's just so on the surface, it's not even trying to hide itself, and it's amazing that the makers at the time didn't really realize what they were doing. They didn't really know that it was so homoerotic until in retrospect, but of course, screenwriter David Chaskin had to have known it, but he insists that it was subtext, that it was just supposed to be kind of under the surface, but it was everything that Jack Shoulder did that brought it more to life. I can rewind that like 3 times just hearing Grady's laugh and Mark Patton's like little like grin. It's hilarious. Not a bad pad. Not a bad pad at all. Meryl Streep Jr. Now, coming up here is probably one of the most memorable sequences from the whole film. Clu Gulliver, of course, ordering Jesse to go back up. He needs to unpack because they're just recently moved into the Elm Street house, and he's not going anywhere until he unpacks his stuff. So, of course, as a little prima donna, he doesn't want to do that now, but if he has to get out, he's going to make this a quick job, and such a groovy song to dance to, unquestionably. This is Touch Me by Wish featuring Fonda Ray. You guys, how do you like that, Dad? That's how I'm going to get back at you. I may or may not have those glasses, but that's neither hither nor thither. Wow, and this is just the homoerotic subtext. This is David Chaskin even envisioned this completely differently, but Jack Shoulder, and there is the butt bump. There it is. Apparently, this sequence used to play quite oftenly in gay nightclubs, according to Mark Patton. So, I wonder why. I gotta get those glasses. I have to own that, and I have to do that. Especially when my mother or wife walk into a room. Now, notice the sign on the front of Jesse's door, no out-of-town chicks. Again, just kind of adding to the homoerotic nature of this film, which the makers of the film claimed they didn't know, they didn't realize that there was this homoerotic nature to it until after the fact. But interestingly enough, the production designer was gay on this film, so it's no wonder that he may have injected these little winks at, you know, the gay subtext that he obviously picked up on. And there's actually going to be another one coming up. Jock itch. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know where my sweaters go. It's only my room. And there it is. Probe. He owns a game board called Probe. Interesting. Very interesting. Very nicely placed by the production designer. And here they've actually found a Nancy's diary from the original film. Thank you, Jesse. We didn't know. That is something that I always found interesting in this film. What Kim Myers just said, that diary is 5 years old. You never see Heather Langenkamp's character write in a diary whatsoever, so obviously this was just kind of thrown in into this film to kind of make a connection to the original film, which is okay. But 5 years later, so you have to think that the original was shot in present time, which was, of course, 1984. So jumping 5 years, that it's already 1989 in the timeline of A Nightmare on Elm Street series. And another thing to connect it to is if you watch A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, early on in the film, the surviving cast and their friends are graduating high school, and on their graduation caps, it has the tassel of the 89 logo. So they're addressing and kind of making known that the year is 1989. So if you're that geeky and you're really picking up on these things, you can assume that Dream Warriors, Dream Master, and Dream Child, in addition to the events in Nightmare 2, all took place in the same year. There was no killing Freddy Krueger in 1989, so I don't even know why people were even trying at that point. So I just always found that interesting that they made the conscious choice to make the events in this film 5 years after the original film. So really think about that. Freddy has already attacked and killed the children of Springwood 5 times by Nightmare 5 rolls around. And there is Jesse sweating his brains off again. And again, that chilling score cues with the piano. And then, of course, this is great. I love the melting kind of props and items in his film or in his room. I think it's great. I always liked you're gonna see in a second, the record that's melting. I always thought that that was just such a cool image, and that always, I don't know why, it's one of those weird images that stuck out to me in films, but I always remembered that for some reason. I always associated it with this film. But yeah, very, very effective, and I really liked that they played that up. But, you know, if you're that hot and you're that sweaty, I don't really know what the reason for a sweater is. But then again, what do I know? It's very chilling, you know, moving into a new house and you feel awkward as it is because you're trying to make the home your home, but to kind of be in the middle of the night and awkwardly walk around, you're spooking yourself completely out of this house that really isn't your own. So it's just kind of playing on that that much more. And again, this is the dance, again, like I mentioned earlier, between Freddy and his victims in each of the films. And again, another thing that Nightmare on Elm Street 2 separates itself from the batch is that Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is the only film that you have a male protagonist in it, which, again, is very, very interesting. I'm sure many people would like to say that Mark Patton was the first male Scream Queen, and I think that you would be correct. I think that he is, and I don't think that that's something that he downplays at all. I think that he is absolutely the first male Scream Queen. He screams his head off like a little girl, and it is very effective in this film. He screams better than some of the other Elm Street girls in the rest of the series. Now, investigating the boiler that he found a stranger residing in just the other night, he finds a little token. And again, just like in the beginning of the film, you find that Freddy Krueger is wearing the glove, the razor-clawed glove, and Jesse has now found it in his boiler. But it's interesting because you won't find him wearing it. No, no, sir. It's dirty. It's probably not even been antibacterial, you know, sterilized or anything. Wow. Again, you know, it's interesting because Again, the glove is obviously in the film, but aside from that early bus sequence, you don't see Freddy wearing it. Instead, it's like the nails are coming out of Freddy's fingers themselves. There's no glove anymore. And I never really liked that. I never liked the fact that the glove was removed from him and it was just razor claws out of the fingers. I didn't like that. Nancy Drew is on the case. She's going to investigate and do a little research on the background of the diary and the events. Very interesting. Now this is going to slowly escalate to a sequence that Wes Craven and a lot of die-hard Elm Street fans really kind of dismiss because it really went against the grain and the rules of the Elm Street mythology. But I have my own kind of stance on it, so we'll get to that in a second, though. Again, some more homoerotic stuff that they kind of make mention of, Jesse and Grady kind of always being, shirtless or changing in front of each other, and they're kind of building up this friendship more than when you saw them, brawling on the field. And when you talk smack about your teachers and you're not paying attention, that's what happens to you kids. Remember that. This was an interesting sequence here of, the heat continuing to build in the house, and it's really not so subtle anymore. It's definitely not just Jesse. Everyone's absolutely affected by it. Again, Clu Gallagher is such a great actor. I just love his appearances and stuff. This was such a banner year for him. I mean, between this and Return of the Living Dead, he was on such a roll, and he's appeared in so many other, genre films. Just a great, marvelous character actor. He appeared in a short in 2006, directed by the late Sage Stallone, called Vic. He plays an aging, Western movie star that's still trying to catch another break for himself. It's just a marvelous short that I would highly recommend picking up from Grindhouse Releasing. Just fantastic. And now this is a sequence that was, it always creeped me out as a kid, but it definitely was not as effective, according to the makers of the film, as they intended it to be. This sequence, in particular, scarred Clu Gallagher's eye very badly. It's pretty close. I think originally they had the bird on like a stick and they were flinging it around and stuff near his face, and then they got so close, scarring his eye, really injuring him. They had developed, this prosthetic bird that looked very demon-like and stuff, but it just didn't look very parakeet enough, so it wasn't used. So instead, this bird just kind of flops around and it just explodes. But the whole intent that screenwriter David Chaskin insists is that birds pick up on, I guess, a certain wavelength or something where they're aware of something coming, and the whole idea was that the bird is aware that something foreboding or dark is on the horizon, but the family doesn't know it yet. At least that was the intent. Kind of got lost in translation with, the workable prosthetics not coming off properly. Right? I mean, at least these are kind of level-headed parents. Birds do not just burst into flames at all. And this is where parents are a little ridiculous. You killed the bird. You stuck a firecracker in him. That's exactly. Bird homicide? You are insisting that I killed our bird with a firecracker. No. I would have beheaded him and made him for, turkey sandwich or something. Firecracker. Malarkey, Clu Gallagher. And 1428 Elm Street is just, oh, Zach called Jesse, if you didn't notice. 1428 Elm Street is just getting the better of Jesse Walsh these days. A lightning thunderstorm coming right through your kitchen. Never a good sign. And when you can't sleep, you go cruising. Where in Elm Street in Springwood, Ohio, does this stuff exist? You know what I mean? Because it's really always presented like a very nice-looking suburbia landscape, and then you see this whole seedy side of 24-hour motels, and then Don's place, a nice little S&M bondage bar. Again, not very subtle with the homoerotic, subtext here. But, of course, this sequence is going to give us the great Bob Shea in one of his cameos that he would pop in throughout the run of the Elm Street series. Bob Shea, of course, the head of New Line Cinema and producer of the film. And I think this might actually be one, if not my favorite, Elm Street cameo from him. Take a look. I mean, yeah, you want to definitely keep that shirt open to give people the idea. And there's Bob Shea, looking leather-clad as a bartender. I mean, no lines from Bob Shea, but it's just it's just funny to see him all, leather, clad daddied out. So I love that subtle cameo. And who's there? Marshall Bell. Grady was right. He does cruise S&M leather bars. And that's just not good for Jesse. And I mean, the motivation behind bringing him back to school after hours to make him run laps is just so bizarre. I mean, you would think from that image alone, okay, he's a creep. He's definitely going to pick up on him or maybe do some not so nice things with him or what have you. But to bring him here to run laps? Yes. Hit the showers indeed, Jesse. And again, he's very, leather-cladded out. Marshall Bell's another great actor, too, been in a slew of great stuff. I think most recently I saw him in The Rum Diary with another Elm Street alumni, Johnny Depp. But yeah, he's a great actor. He's very, very good in this, too. And I think that this is definitely, he's definitely going to get what is coming to him. And screenwriter David Chaskin even said that this is exactly what he would have liked seen happen to his gym teacher. Really, David? Interesting. It is a very effective sequence. And this is kind of where, people are saying that this is the, instances where this film is kind of going against the rules that Wes Craven and the original Elm Street set forth. Freddy is obviously trying to take over Jesse's body, and Jesse is falling asleep in the shower, but Coach Schneider isn't asleep. So it's interesting that these, supernatural things and balls being thrown at him. Balls are being thrown at him. It's subtext, though. It is subtext. But it's effective. It's a very effective sequence. It's... Freddy is not appearing here yet. It's just supernatural things. The strings off the rackets are being burned off. I think it's effective. It's chaotic. It's creepy. You don't know what's going to happen next. But, I get it. It's going against the grain as to, the fact that Coach Schneider is not asleep. So how can Freddy be doing these sorts of things and, rigging him up, as it were, right here, and dragging him into the shower to be with his star pupil. Again, I think this is a very effective sequence. I think that it's scary, and, again, this is where it's going to get a little more homoerotic, kind of living up to the reputation this film has. Freddy whipping Schneider's butt with a towel, just gashing it completely. I mean, it's not completely out of the realm for Freddy to do kind of naughty, sadistic little things like that. And right here, through the fog, you're going to see Jesse more or less maybe become Freddy. Freddy is kind of living through him now, getting that much more powerful, inhabiting his world. Now here, that is not Freddy. That is not Robert Englund. And like I said, you know, he wouldn't be wearing the glove, but it's not really Freddy because it's going to morph back into Jesse. But in that sequence where you saw Freddy in the fog, that's not Robert Englund. First male Scream Queen, absolutely. That is actually not Robert Englund. It was, you know, coming off the success of the original Elm Street, Robert Englund, rightfully so, wanted, you know, a raise in his salary, which Bob Shaye refused to give him. It was at that point that they decided they were going to go through with the sequel, and they went ahead and started filming it. For 2 weeks, they just started using a stunt double because, you know what, it's just a guy in a mask, right? Not the case. Robert Englund brought something very special to that role, and he knew it, you know, especially, you know, that early on in the original film, that after 2 weeks of using the double, they really realized just how important Robert Englund was to that character and just how pivotal he was. So after that, they got rid of the stunt double, paid Robert what he wanted, and the rest is history. But it was a wise call because it's not, you know, a stunt performer's job. It's not, you know, a brooding, silent, you know, husky maniac. You know, Freddy has more to him than that. He's got wit, he's got charm, he's vocal. So a lot of that, you know, Freddy brought through in his mannerisms. You know, Robert knew how to do that. He is not fine, Mrs. Walsh. And there's Clu Gallagher playing Tim the Toolman Taylor, taking off the bars that Nancy's mom put on the film near the final act of the original. Or a firecracker in the mouth, Clu. Oh, the deadly dinosaur pulling into Springwood High. Watch out, ladies. And of course, nobody knows what's going on here. I think Jesse may have somewhat of an idea. But of course, everybody's there because Coach Schneider is not in the best condition right now. Acting like a shit. Oh, Grady and his explanations of how things go down in 1985. Again, the heat and the sweating is just really hitting this all-time mark with Jesse. And such a great room, too, might I add. Simple Minds, you know, really, you know, playing up the sign of the times there. Simple Minds, of course, responsible for Don't You Forget About Me from The Breakfast Club. And the glove, again, you know, it's in Jesse's possession, but we don't see Robert Englund as Freddy wearing that glove again. It was just in the opening bus sequence. So, you know, I never really understood that. I think that it may have been because the glove had gone missing. I may be wrong about that, but I think the glove did go missing at some point during the shooting of this film or right at the end of the first film. This is cool too. I liked that, you know, a very eerie kind of shot of him opening up his sister's door, and you're kind of playing ode, kind of homage to the Jump Rope Girls from the original film. So I liked that they were really kind of playing on. Well, the film itself is very, it's a left turn and such a departure from what Wes Craven had set forth. They did manage to inject a lot of these kind of nods to the atmosphere and the tone that Wes injected in the original. Yeah, seriously. It's all about location, location, location. And you just moved into the murder capital of Ohio. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this film was actually a pretty big rental for me in the video store days. I probably watched this film just as much as I watched the original film, but this was a pretty regular rental for me. Again, some weird shenanigans happening in the house with a fire going on. These things just don't happen very often. Firecracker in your parakeet's mouth, your unplugged toaster, lighting up. It all makes sense. But yeah, this film was I watched this probably just as much as I did the original, and I always thought it was very effective as a kid. Of course, as a kid, I didn't really pick up on the homoerotic undertones to the film, but yeah, in retrospect, I know that as years went on, people really looked down on Nightmare 2 for whatever reason, that it was such a departure from the original, or for reasons like this, that it just, came off with this gay subtext to it. But as as the years progressed, it's kind of looked back on more favorably than it ever has. Really, how people have kind of reevaluated their opinions on Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. The same can kind of be said about Nightmare 2, and I've definitely held the torch for Nightmare 2. I think that it's, like I said, it's a dark, brooding film. Again, Freddy's he's more vocal in this film than he was in the original, but he still possesses, like, that dirty old man, kind of stigma to him. He wasn't the MTV jokester just yet. You see that more in Dream Warriors, definitely. I mean, it's definitely more fantasy-filled and stuff, but it wasn't really until 4 with the Dream Master that he really became like this poster child for, MTV, and he was all over the place. But Nightmare 2 still definitely manages to keep Freddy very withdrawn, very much in the shadows, and very dark. He's still something to fear very much. And here they are through Lisa. I have a feeling that I've referred to her as Angela for whatever reason earlier in the commentary, but I think that might be because of another character by the name of Angela, Jesse's sister, more than likely. But yes, Lisa, played by Kim Myers, during through her investigations, looking through Nancy's diary, she's kind of come across an idea about the murders, and now they've traced it back to the boiler room where Fred Krueger had worked, and brought his child victims there. And I really liked the location that they used in this one as his boiler room grounds. And while it's a great location, they had an incredibly hard time shooting here because it was so big and so vast that they had such difficulty lighting the place up. And you'll see it, in the finale. It's very dark, but yeah, apparently it was a nightmare, no pun intended, to light this place because it was just so big. It was like a labyrinth, and you'll see that too because they do quite a wide shot of it in the final act. But it's very impressive. I really liked the scale and just the scope of how big this boiler room was. So very, very cool. I like this shot too. I think that it's very eerie, kind of this this POV shot of presumably Freddy, but coming from the boiler room. Something in the boiler room is coming to haunt Jesse in his nightmares again. But I just like that it goes straight from the inferno of the fire, brings you all the way up. Is it Freddy? Could be. Or is it Jesse? Or is it one and the same? That's very creepy. And there's the glove again. Very, very freaky. Stay up fast acting, stay awake pills. Awesome. Some old school Coca-Cola. You don't really see the cans made like that anymore. I feel like, it's, there's kind of a lip now in the bottom of them, but the old ones are just kind of like a straight up can. Look at him. That shirt hasn't even been ironed. He's just still disappointed about the bird. I mean, technically you are. You are taking the stay awake drugs. Over the counter, sure, but you are using pharmaceuticals here. There's Screech again in the back. It totally looks like Screech. I know it's not Dustin Diamond, but again, Grady, being the meathead that he is, 3 milk cartons, talking with his mouth full, but, again, it's very funny. How their friendships kind of developed from being this, kind of a competitive nature in the beginning to being, very friendly now. I wish you would talk to me. Get out together. There's nothing to be about. I don't want to waste the time with my best. Shut up, Brady. Oh, lover spat. And now we're at probably the arguably the most exciting sequence in the film, but then also the same sequence that's probably met with just as much controversy, and we'll get to that in a second. But of course, we're here back at Lisa's house for the party that they're trying to host, while Lisa's dad is being uber lame about it. Night Crawlers, 12:30. Now this is a pretty uber party, if I may say so myself. An in-ground pool, little pool house. They have got it made in the shade. Jesse? Can I please talk to you? See, again, it's just, playing into the homoerotic nature. It's Lisa's character is just trying to break through to Jesse and kind of make a connection to him, but he's very insecure and withdrawn, and he's pushing her away, this female that's obviously very much interested in him and cares for him, but instead he's just not into her. He's always around Grady as they're changing and whatnot, so it's these subtle things that really gets brought into a head in this sequence leading on to the next one. All night long. He seems so interested. Mark Patton's an incredible guy. Very, very talented individual who left the acting world behind. At this point, I don't believe he was an openly gay actor. He, of course, would be, but he eventually moved out of the acting world for various reasons. But he is a very, very humble, sincere guy. Loves his Elm Street fans, and just such a strong and empowered individual. He is. He has contracted HIV, and he's such a fighter and such a strong voice, in the community, and has been very vocal about his condition. But it's amazing how it doesn't seem like it affects him in his daily routine and whatnot. So it's an amazing thing that he's vocal about it, and it's just great. I love seeing that, and his performance in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is very effective, and it's a shame that he left the acting world because he was very good and talented at it. But I think he moved on to do something with art. And here, him and his co-star Kim Myers getting very hot and heavy. And it is just uncanny how much Kim Myers looks like Meryl Streep. Huge portion. I mean, of course, she's very much talented, but it was her talent matched with the fact that she looked like Meryl Streep that really landed her the gig here. And that tongue is awesome. That always made me jump to as a kid. It's a very effective little slimy tongue. I believe Kevin Yeager took over the makeup and special effects on this film, and they didn't take many pictures or photographs of Robert Englund's original makeup in the first film, so it was really like starting from scratch, figuring out how the makeup worked and how they could apply it onto Robert Englund's face. So, Kevin Yeager really, he was the one that really implemented those, amber red-looking eyes that I mentioned earlier in the film. And again, playing into the homoerotic overtones, you had a beautiful female with Lisa throwing herself at Jesse. He pushes her away, and he has landed in the bedroom of his best friend, Ron Grady. I think Grady's afraid of wetting the bed. The only possible excuse for the rubber sheets. The homoerotic nature aside from there's something trying to get inside of me, Grady, I think that he's very effective, Mark Patton. You really get that he's afraid and scared. You can see it in the eyes. He's very emotional, and I think that it really drives the emotional aspect of what this kid is going through. And while it's Freddy's trying to inhabit his body and take over, or if you look at the subtext, it is a closeted teenager trying to come to terms with the fact that he's gay. He's a gay individual and trying to, live life in, a very complex and confusing world. But, the emotional delivery of Mark Patton really drives it home. It makes you scared, too, he's scared as the protagonist, and he's a guy, so you would think that putting a male protagonist would kind of, limit how much an audience could be afraid, because, of course, males, by nature, in pop culture movies are always seen as like the dominant force in this one, where it's a bit of a role reversal in this, where Mark Patton is very feminine and more dainty and fragile, and he's really seen as the woman in this, where it's Kim Myers who in the finale of the film really comes through and is also kind of ultimately seen as the hero, or the more commonly known male part in the film. Go see him. He only pushed you away, so he's totally interested in you. Grady has such a radical room. Wouldn't you agree? Stray Cats poster, he's got a guitar in the corner. He's such a bro. Now, if your friend told you he killed the gym teacher, I don't know if I would just hang around there. I mean, he just moved to Springwood, so you guys have been friends for like 5 minutes. So, I don't know if it's worth it to take a chance. Now, this is probably, at least at this point in time when the film is being filmed, the sequence that you're going to see here that I think Mark Hallstrom was responsible for is a really cool transformation sequence, and I think it took them like 11 weeks or so to get it built and working and running for them to accomplish this effect of Freddy kind of coming through Jesse's body. But at that point in time, it was something that hadn't been done before, or at least not nearly as well as what they did here. And I mean, you're talking like 30 years later, and I think that this sequence is still wildly effective. Very, very cool. So cool there, just seeing the sweater, rip up from underneath Jesse's arm. You gotta take some note too that you're gonna see the glove is not on Freddy here. It's just like leather, or metal knives coming out of his fingertips, which again I never really liked. That eyeball is actually Kevin Yeager's girlfriend, because she was actually small enough to get behind the rig and poke the eye through, so they used her. And that is just so cool. That's imagery that we've seen from the first film. As Freddy kind of looms over Nancy Thompson's bed, and you would see that again in like Freddy vs. Jason and stuff. So it's cool that they implement it with coming through somebody's chest. I think that's so great. It's so effective here. This sequence chilled me to the bone as a kid, still does, and if I wasn't here with the lights on commentating over it, I would probably be shaking right now. And the role of Ron Grady's father right here is actually played by Lyman Ward, who he would appear a year later as Matthew Broderick's father in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It was there that he would actually meet and marry his co-star Cindy Pickett on that film. They'd also play husband and wife, again, in 1992's Sleepwalkers, which was directed by Mick Garris, the Stephen King film. Again, this was supposed to be a little bit more complicated and, I guess more gory, more prosthetics were needed, but they were running behind schedule, low on time, so it's not nearly as gory or, intense as it was meant to be. It's just kind of like Grady has, the claw slashes on him. And that is creepy right there. It is... The blood is literally on the hands of Jesse now, where Freddy's just cackling in the reflection, which that always freaked me out, to like look in a mirror and just like see Freddy Krueger on it. again, it's just this emotional, toll that Mark Patton sends himself on that really drives it home. I think that's why I think what he goes through as a character in this film always made me scared, because I believed him. I believed in the fear that was in his eyes and coming through in his emotions. And it's a very underrated performance. I think I really do. I think that he's very great in it. Of course, he's feminine and he screams like a girl. Whatever, though, it's scary. I would challenge anybody to not scream like a girl if Freddy Krueger was inhabiting your life. Now, this is risky territory, coming from the scene of a murder or crime. Great, because I was kind of walking the streets in all this bloody glory. You might, no pun intended, get a red flag if somebody saw you on the street, but thankfully he made it back to Lisa's house in one piece. Subtext, right? Another interesting thing to note in this sequel is that this is the only film in the history of the franchise where no females die. It's all males. And now this is that controversial sequence that I was mentioning earlier that is probably the most exciting of the film, but again, it's going against the grain of the rules and the mythology of Elm Street. You have to be asleep in order for Freddy to inhabit your dreams and to take control and eventually murder you. But as you can see, nobody is asleep here. Jesse's awake, and everybody seems to have a problem with that. Wes Craven never really liked this, and obviously the makers of the film didn't really realize until after the fact. But I do have a bit of a reasoning behind this, although it's coming many, many years in retrospect, and they clearly didn't intend this. But suspend obviously disbelief for a second. If Freddy is trying to inhabit Jesse's body and himself as a person, he's doing it throughout the course of the film, starting early on, starting with the night terrors and the sweating. So the more that Jesse is succumbing to his fear of Freddy, Freddy is getting that much stronger and taking that much more control over Jesse. So I kind of argue that if Jesse, the stronger Freddy is getting, and eventually if he gets full control over him, Freddy will be owning Jesse at this point and be able to inhabit Jesse now as a person. So what would stop him from being in the human world with no dreams necessary? It's really no different than what they did in Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare, as Freddy is of course killing John Doe and the last of the Springfield children to eventually go anywhere he wants. That's really the point of that film. And then of course in the finale they bring him into our world where he's vulnerable. So I don't really know why people are making that big of a deal about it. Freddy is getting to an all-time, he's getting to an all-time powerful in this sequence where he's kind of breaking the barriers now of the dreams and the real world. So that is kind of where I can see where it makes sense in the context of this story that he hasn't been floating in the real world the whole runtime. It's only now where, Jesse's emotions and fear are at an all-time high. He just lost his best friend. He almost killed his sister. So it makes sense to me, at least, and, if you need that to really convince yourself that it makes sense, go with that angle. I don't really see, a stronger case, but nonetheless, it makes for probably the most exciting sequence in the film. Whoever knew that Freddy would be an ankle biter, huh? A subtext again? I don't know. Again, the heat, of course, the boiling, pool water going, which is awesome. Great little, you didn't need that china anyway. And this sequence, honestly, always stuck out to me as a kid, too. This is probably, again, like I said, it's the most exciting sequence in the film, but it's always been the most memorable to me. I always remembered watching this as a kid and kind of, like, hiding behind the couch with my eyes kind of, hiding behind a pillow and, catching peeks when I would get the bravery to. So it's totally effective, and it still is cool to see unfold. Again, you can see the makeup design in this one that Kevin Yeager did, where he was more or less starting from scratch. He was kind of going for more bone structure in this one, and, kind of like a male witch sort of impression with the hook nose and stuff. And, while it's definitely different from the first one and different from the rest of the makeup in as the sequels went on, it's just, it's the makeup in this that really kind of gives it a unique flair. And there's the metal claws coming out of just a hand. There's no glove there. Don't really like that. And now we see Jesse is fighting back. He's not going through because he's kind of, struggling, trying to fight Freddy off internally. And then, of course, Freddy gets the upper hand here. So, again, I totally get it. Nobody's asleep. Yeah, that's on the surface, of course. But, kind of let my reasoning to that really sink in. It really does make sense when you think about it that way. That jump scare always gets me. Another guy, dead right there. No females lose their lives in this film. Very cool effect right there, I like that. I mean, this is just Freddy having an absolute field day at a pool party. I mean, probably in the rest of the franchise, do you never see him confronted with such, a rampant amount of kids in one standoff. So it's cool to see Freddy kind of take control. And in this sequence, he spurts probably one of his most memorable lines from the whole franchise, too. You have to give this guy credit to try and be the negotiator, right? Pretty sure that was like ADR, because you don't really see Robert Englund's lips moving there. One of the most iconic lines that Freddy rattles off. That's another reason to love this sequence, is that it just birthed that line. Just love that it's so creepy that he just slyly walks out of there, just walks his way out. And again, it's another interesting thing that, if you're going with the timeline, this takes place 5 years after the original. Again, it's 89. Like I mentioned earlier, that means that the events of 2 through 5 all happened within this year, essentially. So, all these kids at this pool party, tons and tons of kids, have seen Freddy in the flesh. They know that he exists. So now that there is something very much to fear, they have been made aware of this presence. So who's to say that maybe, Kristen or some of the other Dream Warriors weren't at that party to kind of get the fear in their head of Freddy. And here Lisa is going back to Freddy's old stomping grounds with some like demonic dogs with human faces, which I always thought the idea of them was very creepy, and that initial jump scare can get you if you're not prepared for it, but I think money and time were a factor in that one, and they didn't come out nearly as well as they were supposed to. But I think the idea is so cool. But yeah, it didn't really get pulled off perfectly there. Again, this is that wide shot that I was mentioning before, just kind of showcasing the endless labyrinth that this boiler room location was that they selected. You can only imagine what a nightmare this thing must have been to light up, because it's just so endless and huge, but it's so effective that you walking into this thing late at night, you are literally walking into a steel hell, and Freddy's your host. And this is really, kind of that whole role reversal thing that I talked about earlier of, Jesse is kind of like the male Scream Queen, where he's very feminine. While he's the protagonist, he's very feminine, very withdrawn, scared, unsure of himself. Whereas, Lisa is the one that's pursuing him. And she cares for him. She's doing the investigative work to try and figure out what is it that's, bothering Jesse. And then now, of course, here she is, trying to save the day. So gross. But, she is here to save the day, and have, one big showdown with Freddy. I wonder if Freddy ever gets lost in a boiler room this big. That's cool too, and apparently that was another case where the special effects guy was not overly pleased with it and didn't really pay much mind or attention to that effect, because he was really busy, hard at work on James Cameron's Aliens at the time. So it still is pretty cool. It's so quick that you can't really pick up on any imperfections, but he apparently paid no attention to it. Really, that this project got really far away from him because he was so knee deep in work for Aliens. And there you go. Again, I love that they included, the scratching that Freddy does on the boiler room pipes and stuff, because it was really lacking in the film up until now. And again, there's still this conflict where Jesse is still internally fighting Freddy so that he doesn't fully succumb to him, and Freddy does not, inhabit Jesse. And as you can see now, the stab wounds that Lisa inflicted upon him are now bleeding, because now Jesse is really, fighting back.
not afraid of you. He's in there, and I want him back. I'm gonna take him.
Kim Myers still looks phenomenal today. I mean, just absolutely stunning looking woman, and so nice and fan friendly. If you ever have the pleasure of meeting her at a convention, highly recommend, because her and Mark Patton were always very rare and hard to find Elm Street guests to meet, but in the recent years they've really come out of the woodwork and are just wonderful to their fans.
He can't hold you, Jesse. He's losing his grip. You can get out.
Now, this is you know, really echoing like a Beauty and the Beast type of imagery of, you know, Lisa kind of going in for the kiss on Freddy. But it's that symbol of love and affection that really kind of, you know, kind of tips the scale now, and Freddy is really losing grip, and Jesse really finds the power to fight back fully. This vast inferno kind of brewing on Robert Englund and you know, Freddy in general. It's very cool. It's very effective. This whole like melting kind of motif going on him. It totally works. Another like, you know, tricky effect that you know, Kevin Yeager worked on, when really essentially all they're doing is just melting. You know, whatever the material was, but it's working. You know, you can see the prosthetic moving and kind of, you know, riling in agony. So it's cool. It totally works. Ah, practical effects, how we miss you. Roasted, toasted, and burnt to a crisp. Kind of suffers a very, you know, similar fate to how he went down in the original film. You know, Nancy kind of torching him before, you know, turning her back on him before he just kind of zaps into, like, you know, the abyss. But he's basically suffered the same fate in the sequel. And Jesse is back. See? Way to go, Lisa. The power of love truly did the trick. And it is the woman that has saved, you know, the very cliched image of the domineering man in this sequel. So, very different, you know, very different from the other Elm Street films, but just different in general, just really turning that whole cliched idea on its head. But this doesn't necessarily mean that they're love interests now. I mean, they could walk away just good friends. And Jesse could just still be, you know, battling, you know, coming out of the closet, which I think that's really what it is. You know, he's kind of battling, kind of overcoming, you know, his closeted mindset. And here we go, echoing, you know, the beginning again. Woo! Oh god, I love that triumphant little... And again, in true Elm Street fashion, kind of, you know, mimicking back from, you know, an earlier sequence, you know, everything's sunny days and the birds are out singing again. How can you not talk about that?
Am I going crazy or is this bus going too fast?
Well, it better be 25. It's a school zone.
No. This bus is going too fast. Lisa, it's starting to speed up. Driver! Driver, stop!
Jesse, just sit down.
Don't you look the fool?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's alright. Jesse, it's okay. It's all over.
And then, of course, in typical slasher fashion, you have to have a jump scare, of course. And then riding off into that dead, deserted kind of landscape once again. Yeah, a very unconventional and very left field turn for the series, and a very risky move that I think, in retrospect, was very effective. I think that they really, they really took a chance at this one, and while there's, a lot of subtext or, not so subtle things in this film, I still think that it's a very effective and, at times, very frightening installment of the Elm Street franchise. Again, Robert Englund as Freddy is very dark and brooding in this one. Something that the later films tend to lose. They really just kind of shied away from the darkness, the overly dark nature of the character, and really played up the more comical MTV nature. And that's not, a complaint or a slight at the later sequels. It's just, it's just the nature of the beast. This one is really the last film, unquestionably, where they still kept Freddy very withdrawn and dark. And, I think for that reason alone, I think that it's something to really admire and appreciate. I think that Jack Sholder did a really good job directing this one. Of course, he would go on to direct more stuff, like The Hidden, and he would also do Wishmaster 2. But yeah, I think that he did a great job here. I think Alone in the Dark and Nightmare 2 are probably the best things he did. But yeah, this is a really, really very cool installment in the franchise. I know as years went on, it got knocked for its, it's the gay innuendos in it. But again, very similar fashion like Halloween 3. It's kind of developed more of a cult appreciation, one that I grew up really enjoying, and I think that I find myself liking it even more in more recent years. So again, very very interesting stuff. A lot of fun things going on, and of course, it's still very scary and effective to see Freddy more withdrawn and in the shadows. But that's gonna wrap up the first video commentary that we've done here on Real Horror with Mike and Pete. I want to thank all you guys for checking out the movie with me and listening to my commentary. I hope that it was informative and fun experience for you guys. We hope to do many, many more of these in the future, but until then, be sure to tune in next week where my co-host Pete Macabre is going to be back with me, and we're going to do our typical, formatted show. So definitely tune in next Sunday to check that out. Once again, guys, thanks again for tuning in to Real Horror with Mike and Pete's first video commentary. We'll see you next time.